very, very contradictory, because he was also tough. I was tough, he was tough, so we used to quarrel.
Qualcuno dei fratelli o delle sorelle è diventato scrittore? No.
No, all of them, happily married, no divorces, no scandals. I'm the only one with scandals. They are
tutte normali.
They are all, even some of my sisters are veiled now. They are veiled, yeah. So my Talat was a bit rebellion. He wanted to be a musician. But my father told him, no, you have to go to college, university, no music. So he was a bit frustrated. He died. He died now. He's the only one who died. The others are still living, yeah.
E allora noi siamo adesso agli studi di medicina, 1949. Quanti anni durano questi studi?
Yes. 6 years.
6 anni.
6 years. Long 6 years. Okay.
Fino al 1955.
Exact. 1955. Yes, I finished. 6 years, yeah.
E cosa ha imparato durante questi 6 anni? È diventata medico?
Yes, I became a physician, a medical doctor, and in fact, I didn't learn much in school. The education system is very limited because we inherited the British school in medicine, and I studied medicine in English. And the British way, the educational British system in medicine is very limited. I'll give one example. For instance, we never studied clitoridectomy. You know, we never studied sexology, because after that I made a campaign against cutting the clitoris, against female genital mutilation, against male circumcision. So we studied gynecology in a very traditional way. Women as if just the uterus. We studied reproduction only. We didn't study sexology. So I felt the limitation of the, we didn't study the hymen, though girls in Egypt were killed if they don't bleed on the wedding night. As a medical doctor, we didn't study the hymen, even in anatomy. In anatomy or in embryology or in physiology or in all this, we never studied anything related to women. We studied, you know, the general medical education from the patriarchal point of view. So I graduated ignorant of many things. Ignorant of the clitoris, ignorant of female circumcision or male circumcision, ignorant of the real biology of women, etc. And because I was rebelling, so that's why after I graduated, I started to re-educate myself. And I went more to the psychology, to the psychiatry. In fact, I specialized first in the chest diseases, in tuberculosis. I worked as a chest surgeon for 2 years or 3 years, and then I kept away from curative medicine. I went to preventive medicine, health education, and psychiatry and psychological problems. So in fact, I was not really happy with the medical education. I felt also rebelling against the medical education. And I didn't find myself as a woman in the medical education.
Quindi gli studi di psicologia li hai intrapresi attorno al 1958? Se per 3 anni si è dedicata alla chirurgia toracica? 3 anni,
No,
3 anni di chirurgia toracica.
I graduated 55.
55. Poi 3 anni si è dedicata alla chirurgia toracica, dopo la laurea.
Usually, you know, because in Egypt we have to stay 1 year, we call it in residence. And then 1956, I went to chest diseases. Here is 1 year in the university hospital. They call it residence. And then I went to chest diseases. I worked for years in chest. 3 years in surgery, and then medicine, chest. I was fed up with the chest and the tuberculosis and the blood and all that. I went to preventive medicine, preventive, health education. I went to the Ministry of Health, and then I started psychiatry and psychological work. So I changed my area, yes, because I was very, very much against the medical profession, in fact. And I felt limitation. When I was working as a chest physician, I was all day and night in a hospital with tuberculosis patients. So I felt I am away from life, away from politics, away from the whole life. So I wanted to get out of the hospital. I felt the limitation of the hospital. So I want to get out to the society. That's why I went to preventive medicine.
Quindi nell'ospedale ormai lei lavorava, faceva pratica e lavorava.
Yes, I worked in the hospital. I had a private clinic and then I closed it. I went from a hospital to a hospital. So I was shifting all the time because I was dissatisfied. I cannot work.
E il diario intanto? Il diario?
Yes.
Sempre.
Oh, all my life. All my life. I never left the paper and the pen, always with me. That's my friend, my only friend in life.
Quindi psicologia ha cominciato un po' attorno alla fine degli anni 50.
Yes, in fact, even when I was in the medical college, when I was a student, I was much more interested in psychology from the beginning. And even in high school, I remember here, in high school, when I went to the library, I was reading also psychology. So all my life, and because I was writing all the time, so I was very much nearer to the study of psychology, philosophy, religions, you know, more than other things.
Quindi anche filosofia.
Oh, I love studying and reading philosophy, yes. But I was reading in Arabic, of course.
Sì. Quindi leggeva anche, non so, Aristotele.
Yes, in Arabic and the Arab philosophy, Ibn Sina, Ibn Rushd, and all that. And
sì. Bene, 10 minuti di intervallo.
Okay.
Allora, gli studi di psicologia e di filosofia, incominciati in collegio, proseguiti poi durante gli studi di medicina, sono diventati poi, accanto agli studi letterari, una costante.
Exactly, yeah.
E allora i dubbi sull'Islam, com'è che poi man mano sono diventati sempre più radicali e come si sono tramutati poi in battaglia per i diritti civili delle donne.
Number one, my doubt was not only in relation to Islam. My doubt was to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam since I was in primary school with my friends Isis and Sarah, because the three of us, we read in school the three holy books, the Old Testament, the New Testament, and the Quran. And we, though we were very young, we were not convinced by those books. We felt that girls are despised in those books. I can give examples from the Old Testament about the menstruation. For instance, when we were children, we stopped at some verses in the Old Testament about the menstruation, that it's bad, and women should be separated, etc., and should be cleansed. And also there is a verse that really made me think a lot and created the doubt about religion, about God, and about the Old Testament, the New Testament, and the Quran, because also menstruation was mentioned in the Quran as something bad. So in the Old Testament, there is something very interesting, which say that if a woman gives birth to a male child, she is dirty, not clean, in her blood for 32 days. If she gives birth to a baby girl, a female baby child, she is dirty or not holy in her blood for 64 days, double. So I remember when we were children, we said, how come if my mother is pregnant, give birth to me as a girl, she is dirty 64 days, but with my brother, she is only dirty in her blood 32 days. How? So we were laughing. And they said, this is the word of God. And we were not convinced. How can God think like that? And then also, it's said in the Old Testament that she should slaughter a chicken or some meat and give it to God to be clean of her blood. So we said, what's that? What's the relationship of killing a chicken or a duck or a lamb and give it to God, offer to God to be clean of her blood? It didn't make sense, and we were very young. And so we started to doubt, the three of us, the Jewish, the Coptic, and me. We started to say, what's that? As girls, we refused this logic of God, that girls are so despised. And then it grew with me. This doubt started to grow. The more I become older, the more I read the three holy books, and compare, the more the doubt increase. I remember something very funny because I told my Jewish girl, when I read the Quran, there was no killing of chicken to God. There are no offering. So I said, it's good to be a Muslim because we don't have money to buy and offer God, because it's also class that a rich woman can be cleaner because she has more chicken, more lamb, more. So my doubt in relation to your question was not only against Islam, it was against the three monotheistic religions. And the more I read, I spent years comparing after that in the medical college, and even now, I carry with me the three holy books. With me, I carry them with me in Arabic and in English, because I study them, I compare them, because they say that's the word of God. I have to study the word of God and to compare it. So my doubts are increasing and increasing till I wrote my play, God Resigns, at the summit meeting, which, by the way, I won the case. I would like to tell you that I won the case in the court in Egypt 2 days ago, on the 13th of May. That's historical, 13th of May 2008, I won the case in court against the fundamentalist movement in Egypt, because they said that I should be deprived of my nationality. I should not be allowed to go to Egypt because of my play called God Resigns at the summit meeting. It's very critical of the three holy books. So, and that's the fight. So the doubt.
Quando l'ha scritta quest'opera?
I wrote the play in 1996 when I was in exile. I was a professor at Duke University because my name was put on the death list in 1988 in Egypt and then in 1992. So I have to leave Egypt and to teach in Duke University in 1993, and I stayed there till 1997. But in 1996, I wrote the play in Arabic. I wrote it in Arabic first.
Quindi noi siamo intanto attorno al 1960, quindi lei ha fatto gli studi di medicina, è stata negli ospedali e dopo, quando ha proseguito sempre a fare la professione nell'ambito medico, oppure a un certo punto ha lasciato la medicina per dedicarsi alla scrittura?
In fact, I continued to work as a medical doctor and in the Ministry of Health till 1972. The Minister of Health, the government issued, I was fired from my job in 1972 because in 1971 and in 1970, 1968 and 1967, in those years, I started writing a book called Women and Sex. And I was very critical of the political system, the government, and the health institution, and the whole hierarchy, the class patriarchal system in Egypt. So the government, the Minister of Health, dismissed me in 1972 from my post in the Ministry of Health. So I continued to work as a medical doctor for years, until they dismissed me, in fact. And I was very happy to be dismissed because I gave more time to writing. Because to have a job and write interfere, it's very difficult to combine a full-time job with a full-time writing. It's very difficult. So when I got rid of medical profession and of the health profession and the Ministry of Health in 1972, I started to be freer and to work as a psychiatrist, freelance like that, and as a writer. Since 1972.
Il suo primo libro quando l'ha fatto?
My first book, this was during the 50s. In fact, the first book in 1944. 1944. I was 13 years of age.
13 anni.
Yes. This was...
Non pubblicato, libro non pubblicato.
It was published. No, I published it, but after that. But I wrote it. It has a story. Because in the Arabic, when I was in Helwan school, in the high school, in the boarding school, the teacher of Arabic asked us to write a story from our imagination. So I started a story called Memoirs of a Child called Suad. And the teacher gave me 0. He didn't like the story. But my mother read it, and she told me it's very good. So I kept it with me, and then I published it later. So it came maybe 20 or 30 years after that. But that's my first book. It's called Memoirs of a Child Called Suad. I was 13 years of age. That's my first book.
E dopo? Quale altro libro dopo? Il
And
secondo
then
libro?
the next book was a collection of short stories called I Learned Love. And this was in 1950, after I graduated, 56, 57. Immediately after, I wrote it about my life as a medical doctor in the village. So it came in 1956 or 57, something like that. And then I wrote after that another collection of short story, and then I wrote my first novel. It's called Memoir of a Woman Doctor. Yeah.
Dottoressa, quando l'ha scritto questo, Memorie di una dottoressa?
Memoirs, in fact, it was part of my diary, which I was writing while I was a medical doctor in the village. Because after graduating in 1955, I worked 1 year in the hospital in Cairo, and then I went to my village as a community doctor. So I kept some of the diary, and then I wrote this novel, Memoir of... This came exactly 1957. Yeah. Memoir of a Woman Doctor.
Quindi il diario è la base della scrittura.
I can say so, but not exactly, because the diary was very, very limited, because I am very impatient, so I cannot write every day and take notes. But it gave me some of the memory. I keep a diary so that not to forget.
Quindi Memorie di una dottoressa, in che anno? 56. Che anno Memorie di una dottoressa?
Memoirs of a Woman were
57.
published in 1957 in Cairo. Yeah.
In Cairo. Poi dopo il 60 ha scritto altri libri, ovviamente.
Yes, I never stopped writing. After I wrote, after Memoirs of a Woman Doctor, I wrote collections of short stories. I wrote other novels during the 60s, during the 70s, during the 80s. I never stopped writing. And especially after they fired me, after they fired me here in 1972, I started to be more productive because I had more time.
Questo libro, Le donne e il sesso, è stato il primo libro che l'ha fatta conoscere internazionalmente?
Maybe, yes, maybe. This was also the first book that created problems to me. It was the reason why the government dismissed me because of woman and sex. Because in this book, it was not my first book. It is the first non-fiction book. It's essays. It was essays against female circumcision, against the conception of honor, against the conception of virginity and hymen, against all the health problems of women, and about the discrimination and the political the class patriarchal system. So in this first book, I put all my anger since I was a child. I put it in this book. So the government didn't like that, and the Al-Azhar also was against me. Usually, the people against me, people in the government, in Al-Azhar, the religious groups, and the people with a lot of money, the capitalists. So those are the group that are against my writings. Till today, I call it the unholy alliance. Unholy, unholy alliance. Because it brings the religious to the government, to the neo-colonial also, the British, American, and neo-colonial powers. So those are the unholy alliance that are against unveiling the mind in Egypt or in Iraq or Palestine or in any colonized country. They work together to stop any mind from thinking. This unholy alliance, it's global, the neo-colonial powers with the British, American, and then the local government, and then the religious groups. So those are the three unholy alliances that censored many of my work since I started writing, played a role in my dismissal from my work as a doctor, preventing me from writing, putting me in prison under Sadat, putting even my name on the death list. So this is the unholy global local alliance working against anybody who think against class or patriarchy or religion.
Lei scriveva in arabo o in inglese?
No, I write in Arabic. All my books, the originals, I have 45 books, all in Arabic, all. But they are, in fact, I started to be translated in 1980 only, you know, because I started writing in 1944. So I wrote in Arabic 40 years until I was published in foreign language. My first book that came in London was in 1980, The Hidden Face of Eve, because my husband, Sharif, translated it from Arabic to English. That's why my books started to be known. Since 1980 only.
quali anni è stata incarcerata?
Sadat.
Sadat.
Yes, Sadat. Exactly, I was arrested 6 September 1981. And Sadat was assassinated 6 October 1981, exactly 1 month after he put us in prison. And we were 1,600 something prisoners. 106,000 around prisoners, but only 12 women. 12 women, and the other are men. 12 women, and we were 12 women from different political groups.
E quanti erano detenuti politici?
They considered that 14 political, but we have the right wing here, Islamic and Christian fundamentalist. So we were divided in the cell, because I wrote a play called 12 Women in One Cell. So the right wing, really Islamic and Christian, because there were Christian women with us in the prison. So this was here.
Ma non nella stessa cella? Nella stessa cella?
In the same cell.
Stessa cella?
In the same cell. We were 12 women in the same cell. So we had the right-wing Islamic Christian prisoners, women, because we were in the women prison. And then we had the left Marxists, left-wing Marxists who belonged to Marxism. And then I was in the middle, the independent writer. I was in the middle, the independent writer, because I didn't belong here or here, you know, so
Quanto è rimasta lì in carcere? Quanto tempo è rimasta in carcere? Prigione?
As I told you, Sadat was killed 1 month.
Un mese.
Mubarak kept us another 2 months. So I spent 3 months. I spent 3 months in prison. Yeah, and then we came out. And I wrote a book, in fact, one of the very important books I wrote in prison, called Memoirs from the Women Prison. It is in Arabic, in English, and in many languages, but not Italian, no. Not yet Italian.
E quindi dei libri fatti fino al 1980 nessuno poi è stato tradotto in altre lingue.
Yes. The first book was the non-fiction called The Hidden Face of Eve in English, but then it was translated to 30 languages, you know, after that. Many people translated many of my books to other languages all over the world, but it started by the English, one book, The Hidden Face of Eve.
Le autorità religiose si erano sempre opposte, no? Ai suoi libri, alla sua condotta, alla sua battaglia.
The government, British, neo-colonial British, American, and the religious. It's the three, not only the religious, the government also, the government, and the external powers and the religious groups, both the Christian and the Muslim, both. And of course, the Jewish fundamentalists.
L'alleanza non sacra. L'alleanza non sacra.
Yes. In addition, also, this is very important in my politics, that I am very critical of the Israeli state politics and their aggression against the Palestinian. So this also adds to the problems that I face.
Sì, dunque lei praticamente non si sposava, andava avanti con gli studi, poi con la professione medica, ma non si sposava. A un certo punto si è sposata.
Yeah. In fact,
Com'è andata?
when I was 10 years, when I was a child of 10 years, my family wanted to get rid of me because I created a lot of problems for them as a child. So they wanted to marry me off when I was 10 years. And I wrote many stories in my autobiography in Arabic and other languages about this event and how I escaped marriage because of the support of my mother. Because I could have been married when I was 10 years, like all the girls in the family, in the village. Most of the girls in my family, they were married when they were 10 or 11. And I was tall. I had menstruation when I was 9 years of age. So I was big and tall. So they said this should be married. But then I rebelled against that, and my mother supported me. So I escaped marriage till I graduated from the medical college. I met my first husband, the father of my daughter. He was also a very rebellion. He was
Mona.
Mona. He is the father of Mona Helmi. His name was Helmi. And Mona Helmi is my daughter. She's a poet and writer. And her father also was very talented. He was a guerrilla fighter against the British, etc. And he was my first big love, you know, big love. But then we married, but we were separated after 1 year. I couldn't live.
Che professione faceva lui, Helmi?
He was a doctor. He was a
medico.
Yeah. He was my colleague in the medical college, and he was a writer. He was very talented. He was a very, very extraordinary man, because in fact, I didn't like men, because I hated my brother because of his privileges. I didn't like men because I felt they are aggressive, even in the street. When I walk in the street, they throw stones at me, etc. And so I felt I hate men. But when I met Ahmed Helmi, my colleague, he was the first man to convince me that I can love a man, you know, I can have a love relation. Because he was creative, he was a writer, he was a rebellion, and he was very handsome too. So all of this made the big love. But then we lived 1 year only. Because, number one, the marriage system is very oppressive. Even the man can be very, very liberated at the beginning, before marriage, but then the minute he becomes a husband, then he must be the husband, you know, and I don't accept that. And also there were many problems related to him and his fighting and all that, so we had to separate. So we were separated after 1 year only. And I took my daughter and lived and left him. So this was my first marriage. My first and
Quindi lei ha lasciato il marito.
I am the one who left the two husbands. I divorced two husbands, in fact, the first and the second. I divorced them in a very, very horrible way, because it's very difficult for a wife to divorce her husband. In Egypt, the husband has the law with him. He can divorce me, but I cannot divorce him. So you need a lot of power to divorce your husband. So I had to divorce two. The first one, the second I married after 3 or 4 years, he was a man of law, a judge. And you know, the people who study law are very rigid mentality, very rigid, very obedient to the law. I couldn't live with him. Less than 1 year. The first one was 1 year, the second was less, half a year. I couldn't continue. And the second one came to me and he said, you have to choose either me or your writing. So I thought for half a second, and then I told him my writing. I chose my writing, yeah. And we were separated. We left each other. Then I met Sharif in 1964, after he came out of prison, because Sharif spent 14 years in prison. He was a doctor. He was one of the very first at the top of the medical college. He went to prison for 14 years, 14 years, because of his politics against the British. He's a socialist. He was a Marxist. And we met in the Ministry of Health in 1964. And we are married till today, you see? So how many years? 80, now it's 2008.
44
44 years. So I've been married to the third one 44 years. So this is also too much for me. Too much, yeah.
Ma come avviene che dunque una donna ribelle poi non vuole sposarsi? Si sposa una prima volta, si sposa una seconda volta e poi si sposa la terza volta e rimane sposata per 44 anni. Non è un paradosso? Paradosso?
Yes, it is. It is very paradoxical. And in fact, I was thinking of separating my husband all the time. All the time. We quarrel all the time, we separate. But he is a very gentle man. He's patient. He's creative. He's a writer. He's a nice person. So he calmed me down, you know. He told me, calm down, calm down. So we manage, but we are more friends, you know, because we don't live with each other all the time. I am traveling most of the time, or he is traveling. So we are more of a friends rather than husband and wife. That's why we continue. But if we are living every day together, no. It cannot go like that, no. It's a bit difficult because I think the problem is with the marriage system. My husband, Sharif, because he's half British and half Egyptian. His mother is British, and she brought him in a very liberal way. No discrimination between boys and girls. So, but the society affects him. If he is equal to me, they say, oh, he's a weak man. So in order to say that he's not weak, he has to show that he dominates me, you know? So the marriage system is not really, I call it, it's a remnant of the slave system, the marriage system. Even here in Italy, even in the United States, you know, women, when they marry, they carry the name of the husband. I never carried the name of my husband because my name is Nawal El Saadawi. That's my name since I was born. If I was in the United States, I could have changed my name 3 times. The first husband, the second, and the third. So I think that the marriage system all over the world is very, very oppressive to women. And the symbol of this oppression, that women change their name. Why should I change my name when I marry? And my daughter, Mona Helmi, started a movement in Egypt 2 years ago. She's carrying my name. She said, why we don't carry the name of the mother with the father? So she started carrying and signing her writing with her name, my name, and the name of her father. And they took her to court, accusing her of apostasy, that she's against Islam, you know. So the name is a symbol, the name of the mother, the name of the wife. My name is part of my identity. How can I give it up like that when I marry?
Come ha conosciuto Sherif?
In the Ministry of Health, because when he came out of prison in 1964, in fact, he was put in prison from
13 anni.
Who?
Quanti anni lui è stato in prison? 13.
14 years. He spent
14 anni, 14 anni.
14 years in prison. He came out in 1964, and he came to the ministry because he's a doctor. So we met in the Ministry of Health in 1964. And at that time, I was divorced. I divorced 2 husbands, and I said never to marry again. But then I met Sherif, and we talked and talked and talked. And when he asked that we marry, I told him my problems. I told him, you know, I am not a good wife, and I am a very good mother, very responsible. I never left my daughter, never, never, because there are mothers who leave their children and marry. I never did that. I took care of my daughter, my son, when I had my son with Sherif. So I am a very responsible mother, but I'm a very bad wife, you know. I don't like the role of a wife to cook and to iron, and I cannot do that. I am not a kitchen woman, you know, I can't. And I am rebelling against the role of the wife, you know. So I told him, I cannot be a wife. You have to know that. If you want a friend, a colleague, we write, we think, we have a dialogue, okay. But to marry and to have a husband-wife relationship, I'm not ready. He said, okay, I'm ready to that. And we married. That's why it's more, I cannot call it it's marriage, it's friendship. It's more of a, it's very difficult to have an equal relationship in marriage under a capitalist patriarchal system. It's very difficult. Even if your husband is very, very liberal. My Sherif believes in equality, but the society does not allow him to be equal to me. The society forces him to be the husband. Or they will say he's not a man, you know. He's not a man. He is weak. He's dominant by his wife and all that. So it's a very complex situation.